Hello and welcome to this month's episode of the B2B Conversion Podcast. I am very lucky today to be joined by Eden Badani, who is Head of Strategy and Copy at Cape Agency and has been a conversion rate copywriting expert for over 12 years. What I love about having Eden on the podcast today is we're coming at conversion from quite a different angle than we usually do. We're usually talking to those who are kind of leading the experiments, pulling the teams together, perhaps not such a creative or artist in terms of the whole process. So I'm really excited to talk to you today, Eden, to hear a bit about your work and your experience and hopefully get some advice for our listeners. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about your role at Cape Agency and, more importantly, how you ended up with a career in conversion rate optimization?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me to join you today, Kirsty. It's great to speak with you. I really enjoy connecting with you prior to us hopping on this call. And so I think hopefully people are going to enjoy what we have to talk about today. So with regards to Cape, starting way back, I never thought I'd end up in anything remotely related to marketing, advertising, or even conversion rate optimization. I didn't even know it existed when I was back at uni, which is quite, not that long ago though. But I actually started off in anthropology and sociology, so I really wanted to understand how people see the world. I was just fascinated by how two people can look at one thing and one person will see a red dot, another one will see a black dot, and both of them are equally true, but equally true perspectives of the same thing. And just trying to bridge those gaps in communication between people, between what people want and think and feel, and between and trying to just bring people together in that respect through better improved communication. And as being a poor university student, I was living on my own, working hard to pay the bills, and I picked up a sales job to help pay the way. And as much as I thought I hated the idea of sales, I ended up loving it. Despite my expectations, I absolutely loved it. And it was that turning point when I realized that what I was learning in anthropology was a really, really good approach to sales, because my impression of sales had been, up until then, the direct response kind of, you're fat and ugly, you buy this thing and it's going to make you better, like that kind of pressure, or buy now, it's 50% off, running prices into the ground, kind of pushy tactics, which a lot of people are exposed to, which is why they have such negative impressions of marketing and advertising in the first place. But when I actually got to it and I was actually speaking with people one-on-one and showing them, demonstrating products to them and learning about them, I realized that it was all of marketing comes down to one thing, and that's trying to bridge that gap in communication between what you have to sell, and when you have a really good product, that's really easy to do that, and between what person is actually looking for or what they need help with and what's important to them. So it's just a matter of aligning those expectations in the right way, and then it becomes really easy. You've helped someone with a great product, they feel great about the purchase. It's a really good feeling. Everyone's really happy, sunshine and rainbows all around. So that's what kicked it off, and then very soon, when family was growing, lots of young kids, I started to look for a way that I could do that without having to work away from home. And so I started working for myself, and for years now, that's what I've been doing. Basically the same thing.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to pick up on two things that you just said there. I think many of the experts that we talked to on the B2B Conversion Podcast have a really avid interest in human behavior and behavioral psychology, because, yes, of course, sales is using the power of persuasion to help a buyer choose your solution, but what you are doing is helping a buyer with a problem. So you're uncovering, okay, these individuals have this particular challenge, and I know that my solution can take this challenge away from them. Now I just need to communicate with them in the right way to get them to choose us and make it really clear that, here are the benefits, here's why, and just really persuade them with the right kind of language. So it all comes down to behavior and sales. And I agree with you. I love sales as well, but for the same reasons that you said, when you really help someone solve a problem, it's incredibly rewarding. The best salespeople are the ones who truly believe that their solution is the best way for that prospector or buyer to solve their problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're spot on with that. I think one of the biggest problems is that with a lot of marketing, advertising, and sales is that it just ends up being so very much top down. It's, leadership has made a decision, or finance says we need to get our numbers up this quarter, so we're going to do anything that we can, and no matter what the cost, to make that happen. And that's when problems begin. So instead of taking a step back and saying, okay, how can we do that in a holistic way, in a way where it's a win-win for everybody, often it comes out where the consumers end up losing out. And that's the worst part. And that's what no one likes about any of this in the first place.
So you've obviously, you've kind of like developed from, really thinking about anthropology and your craft to going into sales, and then taking a step back into copy, but very firmly in the CRO space. The reason that I said it earlier, that what I wanted to talk to you is because you're coming at CRO from quite a different angle, so conversion copywriting. And many of us marketers get wrapped up when we're thinking about CRO. We get wrapped up in the whole, I'll just change this image, and I'll just, this button color will work better, or, this will be the right thing for us to do. But it's all very, very visual. And sometimes that's because it's a quick win. Like we think, that's easy. But actually, pretty much every conversion expert I've spoken to says that the most power is in the copy. And that, contrary to popular belief, as buyers, we actually do read that copy. So it makes sense to focus on it. I mean, can you tell me a bit more about your views on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So with regards to conversion copywriting, again, first of all, there's that notion that people say people don't read online. Of course, it's a quote that's been misinterpreted so many different times. It was referring to a single study that was done. It was referring to a document that was basically, it was like a journal article that was copy and pasted, not good formatting, not enough white space between the paragraphs. And of course, like only 20% of people read it. So of course, everyone took this, and now everyone uses that to do everything from promoting Facebook video ads to whatever. People don't read online, and that's absolutely not true, because it's not that we don't read online. It's that we're getting even faster and faster at deciding whether something is worth reading or not. Exactly. So it's not that we don't read, it's that our capacity for awful copy
has like reduced.
Bad writing has been reduced to this minimum, and we will not. Let's say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even if you started reading a bad book, you would probably still finish it because you still wanted to get to the end. If you picked up a novel, you didn't really like it, but you still forced yourself to get through to the end. Nowadays, people start reading, no, I don't like the way this sounds, and they would just click away. They are totally fine with not finishing the book. They don't have a problem with leaving with open loops and things like that as much as people used to, for example. So I think that behavior has come across, and so people say they don't read online, but it's absolutely not true. Because when you actually take all the copy away, people really struggle to understand, what is it you're selling? How is this of any value or benefit to me? And why should I care? Like, they struggle with these core reasons, which are reasons that are going to persuade them to buy or to make that purchase, to convert at the end of the day. So when you take away all that copy, the copy is like, and one of the metaphors that I like to use, it's like it's just like the what do you call it? Now I got another copyright, lost for words. It's like when you're looking at the key, like a map key. So what this symbol means, this symbol means that, and you can find your way around the map. the symbol. So the copy is just the same thing. It's that interface that helps you understand these things about a product. How valuable is it? Is it worth it? It helps them make a decision as to whether they should convert or not. So it's the same thing. You take all of that away, you don't get enough context for readers. If you take all the symbols away off a map and you say you are here without actually showing you where you are on the map, you have no idea. You've given me a map. I don't, but where actually am I, or how can I find my way from A to B? So copy is really that interface. And when copy is good, people don't notice it. Like they don't notice it. They don't, because it simply feels intuitive. So it's part of the user. It's embedded that much in the user experience. It's guiding them along the way, like we said, from A to B on a map using symbols and directions as you go along. But when you take it away, there's just nothing for them left to do, and they really have you might have a beautiful website, beautiful pictures, great product images. You might have celebrities, people raving about you in videos, but people at the end of the day, they want to learn in their own time. Video forces them to give up some of their time. Because it conceals part of the information within the video. You have to watch it all the way through to get the whole context.
Yeah.
But with copy, it's all laid out there in front of you. You can skip. It kind of democratizes information the way the internet was supposed to. It lets you read what you want. You can pick pieces out, and you could scroll up and down. It gives you that free user experience, which lets them feel in control of their experience and lets them learn at their own pace. And it's like, again, there's so many different facets to conversion copywriting, but basically it really helps people make their own decisions while on their way to conversion.
Yeah, and I think I'll touch on 2 points that you made earlier. Like, I think our tolerance for poor is reduced. Like we won't tolerate it anymore. But like I personally, I'm going to talk from experience. I like to have that choice of finding what's most important to me quickly. And the way I do that is through consuming copy. I've been there with a video and I'm like, no, this is, and you're trying to get to that, but you don't know. So ultimately you can waste as much time on that as you can, at least with a copy. And our brain moves so quickly. If the copy is smart, we can get to what we need really quickly and move on through the website. And actually that's one of our measures with customers is, sometimes if we say, time on site has decreased when we've created a personalized experience, that can be a positive because they found what they wanted and they were able to convert more quickly or move through more quickly because they didn't need to search around for it. So I get you on all of that. And I love the idea of copy democratizing. I think the word was used, the experience, that I can get to what I need. I don't have to wait for the big reveal or something. I know what I want and I'll find it. And when we talk about copy, I know that you're firmly of the view that from a CRO perspective, copy's influence shouldn't just be on the website, but really translate all the way through the customer journey right into product. And I know you've done some work with some product-led growth businesses. Can you tell us a bit more about your experiences there?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So one of the things when we're looking at copy, like we said, copywriters are usually very, very close to the target audience, very, very close to the customer. A really good copywriter in your team, or UX copywriter or researcher, they will have gone and spoken ideally with existing customers or past customers, or done that target and market target audience research. So they would have gotten up and close with them and really been able to download their brains and how your audience thinks, feels, and makes purchase decisions. And the copywriter needs to have a grasp of all of that. But that information needs to get funneled back to the product team so that people can make sure that the product that they're building is actually serving customers' needs. One time I was working with a B2B client, and they built this video streaming platform. It was an alternative to Vimeo and all these other kind of Vimeo and YouTube as well, for private people who wanted to, for example, a gym that wanted to run to have its own app and be able to stream videos of workouts to people, for example, during COVID. And when I went to interview their customers, all of their customers said they loved the CEO, but they hated the product. They hated the product. They said it was too slow. They couldn't customize it. They couldn't do all of these things in it. And I just went, oh my gosh, like, oh, what am I going to actually say to the client? And so I took this information, and so he was focused on these B2B enterprise type customers, and I spoke to these very big, powerful people, and they all said, CEO is a great guy, hate the product. Sorry, I wish I had something else, but I don't have something else. I took this information back to the CEO and I said, look, this is constructive feedback. And this is something that you need to consider as you're looking at the product, because you can't sell if people really don't like it. So they were promised something up front and the product didn't meet that vision of what they were promised. And he actually let out a huge sigh of relief. And he said, you know what? I really don't like these people as customers either. Oh. So it was really he said they've been like, they were referrals or they were friends and they came in and the working relationship has soured over time. And so we actually sat together and said, look, there are things that you can do to expand that. He was relying too heavy on enterprise. Anyway, basically that bit of research for copywriting ended up informing his entire business strategy. So he opened up a freemium tier, free to use. You can have, it has its limitations, but you can use it free forever if you want to, for people that just wanted to kick the tires a bit, see how it works, and then upgraded different types of tiers depending on how much you wanted to use it. And if you wanted enterprise, we can build you something custom. It's certainly going to cost you a lot more than any of these tiered plans. And within the first week of introducing that, an enterprise client onboarded through the freemium and then upgraded to enterprise within a week. And it was like, and then so he wasn't wasting time with tire kickers anymore, who just wanted to get in, check it out and see the product. He didn't have to wait for a full B2B months long, custom build and implementation. So being close to the customer and trying to collect those insights, even for copywriting purposes, that just needs to be funneled back through the business. That part is missing in so many companies, and it's so important.
Yeah, what I was going to say, is he not like, his product team must have been like, oh my goodness, like what have we done here? I suppose they must have had to have some sort of accountability on that front too.
Yeah, it was a bit of that. I think as well, the product is, because they were dealing with mostly enterprise customers, and it also helped them realize that these weren't really the ideal fit for us, because we have a couple of, as the saying goes in sales, we have a couple of whales, but if one of the whales leaves the business, then 50% of your, 50% of your ACV is gone. Or your annual recurring revenue has gone out the window, and you need to work hard to bring in another whale. But then if you have lots of smaller customers who are paying you a regular amount for a smaller tier, if you lose a couple of those, it doesn't really matter, because you've got a couple hundred of them. It's not such a big deal. You've got MRR coming in, and at the same time, then you've still got that freedom to go after enterprise clients if you want to.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a misaligned expectations and the product. So they kept trying to micro customize the product to meet the needs of these specific enterprise customers, which was pushing it out of the range of what other people actually wanted out of the product.
Yeah.
So it was a real mess, but thriving. Now, over 3 years now since we worked on that project, and they're thriving, which is just great.
Brilliant. So can I ask then, so quick question on that point, what it sounds to me like what it really helped to do was support them in defining their ICP, which they didn't realize before. And I do think that is so important in terms of, like, if you're going to go on this conversion journey, you need to say, who exactly should we be talking to? Because, okay, it's one thing to try and talk to everybody else. Okay, that's bad enough. But in the case that you've talked about there, it's another thing to try and make your product fit with everybody, because it just doesn't. There are certain people who it's great for, and that's who you need to talk to. So while CRO can be like, oh God, how do we get the messaging right for everybody? A key part of that whole process, I guess, is saying, well, who is that right audience? Who are our ICP? Because that's who we should just be talking to, not everybody who might possibly at some point have a need for this. It's like, who actually has a need now?
Definitely, and that's one of the things that that people struggle with so much. You know, from a business strategy decision, yeah, let's target 18 to 65 plus, all tier one countries, like everywhere. You know, all geographies everywhere. Like it's fine. But we'll target everyone in the book, and we'll make a ton of money. But that's really not it. It's your product fits a specific type of person. It's not even just. I'm not even saying it's going to be as narrow as demographics, because it often isn't. When you look at, for example, when you take the jobs to be done approach, for example, you can have multiple different types of personas that all desire to do the same thing. So you can actually, if you adopt the jobs to be done approach, you can have one variation of copy that actually speaks to multiple different types of people. But because you've narrowed in on the value that the product delivers and the job that they want to do with it and how it's going to fit in, fill this little hole in the puzzle in their life, you actually can reach multiple people at the same time. That's also something that's fascinating. So there are, again, a couple different ways of doing personalization like that, for example, and segmenting out. So you can have different variations for each different customer persona or type. And sometimes you do have multiple different audiences that need to hear something different from you. But sometimes it can be the other way. Sometimes you have a common denominator running between multiple different groups. And if you focus on that, it's like you check the boxes off on everyone else at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I think you start there, don't you? You say, right, what do all of these, whether it be businesses, personas, what have they all got in common? Right, that's the starting point. And then it's like, what's the nuances of those persona, decision maker types or industries, size of businesses, and you can then segment it further. But yeah, you've got to identify those with the problem first, because that's the thing that they all have in common. So then thinking about that research process then, there's a lot to do before you even think about what you are going to say and how you are going to say it. So when you start working with a client and you're thinking about messaging and copy that really converts, where do you start? Like, what does that research phase look like?
Yeah, so it's for me, it's a three-part process. Then there's three key elements to it, and they all complete each other and add another layer of perspective. So the first one is internal interviews. I like to speak with as many key stakeholders as possible. Having everyone's opinion or thought heard is just as much an important part of the project as anything else, because we need to see whose opinions and whose ideas need to be incorporated and where. So it's often speaking with the CEO, founder, often sometimes the chief marketing officer or the chief finance officer, sometimes, who's a good fit customer on balance sheet, who's in terms of their annual contract value, or monthly recurring rate, like who's a good fit customer for you, who's easy to sell, who doesn't churn, things like that. Amazing the things that you can learn when you get finance on board in the early stages. Great. But also speaking with customer success officer or customer support, whoever's running that at the end as well, to get their feedback, a chief product officer to understand the product in depth. And then the second part is as well to speak with some existing customers. I love to speak with them. It's easily the most important part of every project. I mean, I did say that just now about the internal interviews, but speaking with the customers, it just reveals so much information that you're never able to get any other way. You could prompt ChatGPT to death and you won't be able to find the kind of insights that you can get out of one 30-minute customer interview. I kid you not.
Yeah, 100%.
You just can't compare it. They will tell you exactly what you need to be saying. They will tell you exactly what you think. And because you're also an external party, you're not part of the company, they don't have an existing relationship with you. There's no collateral, there's no collateral there or anything that could be damaged. So they're much more willing to be open with you and share their real thoughts and their experiences, because it's not someone that they're working with at the company that they're giving money to. And then the third step is also zooming out and just doing general market competitive research. So taking a look at who else is in the same space, what are they saying? How are they communicating to their customers? Because on the one hand, we need to be informed by what leadership is saying and what their general business strategy is and what their trajectory is, where the product is going, where they are now, where they want to be. At the same time, it needs to be grounded in the reality of what customers love about the product today, but at the same time, it needs to be differentiated from what other people are saying. So we have to try and narrow in on what is that differentiated value, especially if you're in a much more saturated market where there's multiple different competitors. You really have to make sure that you are honing in on what's unique about your product as well. So not just this thing is cool, but how is it cool compared to anything else that's out there?
So when you're talking to customers, one of the things that I've had and read a lot, and we leverage when we're looking at copy for our customers, is using the language that your customers actually use. How do you then translate? So if they're explaining how your solution solves their problem and they're doing it in a really smart way with good language, that can sound great in a conversation. How would you then leverage that and turn it into good and powerful copy?
Absolutely. So I try to use that as close to, as unadulterated as possible. So leave it as almost untouched as possible. I mean, because it comes across as authentic, it's real, it's unique, it's highly descriptive. I mean, there's no way that even a copywriter can often come up with that magic just sitting there, alone in an office somewhere. I try to leave it out as much as to leave it as untouched as possible, to preserve it in that way, because that's the way that it has the most powerful impact. At the same time, though, when presenting it to people, to the company, say this is a data point. It's a data point. So it's words, but it's a data point. So it's not ChatGPT, which is not a data point, because ChatGPT is a calculator with words, which is really cool, but it's still a calculator. So what you've got is actual qualitative data point. This has been sourced, it has a point, it's generated from something, and you can draw a line back to what that person said and how the product made them feel. So you've got evidence that this is something real, where you can't substantiate anything in ChatGPT or anything otherwise. Or you could just do a quick Google, but you don't even know if what you Google is true either. So so to get it through, it's a data point. This is a data point, and then it's also backed up. And this data point is reinforced by what we know about, like you said, behavioral psychology, user behavior, what people are saying. 8 out of the 10 people we interviewed expressed a similar sentiment to this. This was expressed in the most descriptive way, so we've gone with this version. There's a very, it's very easy to get it through when you present it as a data point instead of just, well, I thought it sounded nice.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Because I think we are, as buyers, we're less trustful of what we perceive as marketing, sales type copy. It's almost like we can see through it. We do prefer the more authentic. And I suppose that's why things like video, in a like raw customer video and things like that has become so powerful, and also things like Trustpilot and G2 and all of that. Like, we want to hear from real people because that's what we trust. So it makes sense that we should be translating that into our like digital experiences and through our website. So, quick question on thinking about then copy. So obviously you will know, you go into a client and you can look at their website straight away and you can see, oh my goodness, there are some real quick wins here. But you also know that there is, some stuff that's going to take a bit of time, like all of the research process, then taking that research process and translating that into, powerful words that will resonate. Does your process tend to try and go for those quick wins first if you can?
It's a great question. So it really depends, I think, on what the client's goals are at that point in time. So if they do, I mean, if they were thinking, for example, of anyway overhauling the entire website because it wasn't performing and it's the project that's been on their radar and they've budget approval and they've signed a design agency and things like that, then okay, there's no better time than to do that deep groundwork now because they've planned for it already. But if they have some short-term goals that they're looking to balance out with their longer-term goals, then yes, absolutely. We do take the approach of looking to see where there are potential opportunities to improve what's currently there, while still acknowledging that this is not it is a quick fix, and that it's not the same as doing everything from scratch.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one of the things I often ask our guests, because I know our customers and potential customers struggle with this, is the process of testing effectively in B2B, because we don't tend to have, millions of visitors to our website that allow us to test really, really nuanced messaging and run hundreds and hundreds of experiments. So how do you start to prove what you're doing is working or not, in which case then you can go and try something else? But how do you get to that point and test effectively?
Right. So usually the first place we start with is somewhere where they're doing paid acquisition.
Right.
So
okay.
Somewhere I'd say, okay, so you're already running ads, you're already running these publishing all these landing pages every month, you're already sending all these cold emails. Let's see if we can test something different in an approach with the messaging or how we're communicating about this. Let's see if what we can do, and you can do an A/B test, because anyway they're doing it. So for them to add a different variation into the mix will give them an idea of how people might respond. It's still not perfect. Obviously, nothing is always as perfect as we'd like it to be, but it's still better than nothing. So let's see what we can. If you write an ad, for example, an ad variation with using information from one customer transcript that they had on hand that you were able to source. If an ad gets more clicks through it, if people are, if it gets more impressions, if it ranks higher and its quality score is higher, all of these things together, if more clicks are going to the landing page, not even if the landing page converts, if you didn't touch that, but at least more people are clicking on it, you're getting at least some data that you're going in the right direction. Or then you had an increase in organic searches and more people saw the ad, even though they didn't click on it, they went and then Googled you and spent some time on the website. So see what that ripple impact might be of something. So usually with something within sales or with the paid acquisition, trying to get in that way is usually a good way for them to start running some experiments, get some feedback on the messages, see what resonates, what doesn't, and because they're already doing those activities, it's just very simple for them to, like I said, to slip in another variation and they can collect those results very quickly.
Yeah, that's a really good shout, isn't it? Because that is almost the widest source of traffic, but also traffic that they know is in some way qualified, interested in the solution. So it's very high quality as well. Okay, yeah, that's a good tip for our listeners, because I think sometimes they are, there is that idea of, we just need to overhaul everything, and we want to get results fast, but we also know if we overhaul everything, we won't actually know what works. Whereas going wider with things like paid search and testing different variations of copy almost allows you to see, right, okay, well, we know that will work to get them to the website, so let's use that when they're on there as well, because clearly that communicates in the right way.
Yeah, but there's also trade-offs to all of that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, when if the purpose of the whole exercise is to improve brand recognition and to improve resonance, and brand awareness, so that you can really double down on demand generation and not just sit and wait for inbound leads to come through. So there's so many things that come into that as a result, and even so there's a lot of different elements that come into play and that you look at when you're assessing something like this. Because as you've mentioned, one thing that you said is you mentioned often a lot of B2B websites, they will just do a complete overhaul, but then the overhaul won't work, which is terrible. But usually in the cases that I've seen it doesn't work, it's because they might have done market research, they might have done competitor research, they might have done internal interviews, but they often leave out those one-on-one customer interviews, and that's usually the missing piece. And when they bring that in, usually even if, let's say, not all the website quote unquote works as perfectly as it should, it's usually still converting better than it was previously, because now it fulfills the expectations that people have of it, because the information is simply there where it wasn't before. So they've got that external voice and outside influence that's guiding them along the way. So by doing that already, you have a really good idea of what direction you should be going in. Despite anything else, that really helps you get that. Just getting close to the customers helps guide your decision making with regards to what you should be doing next and how.
Yeah. And can you give me some example? I know we talked about the product-led growth example, but have you got some other examples of successes that you've delivered in B2B, but particularly alongside or particularly including using copy for conversion? Because so many times we hear, oh yeah, we changed we changed a headline. Fine. Okay, well, that is probably the most important piece of copy. So completely get that. But for me, it's, if that's all we do, that's not enough. It's like everything else that goes on in that journey. So have you, having done those customer interviews, which I agree with you are so powerful, have you got some success stories that you can share of how you translated those findings right the way through the website for CRO?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll even just even a small example. So a B2B company that I was working with a while back, that they got acquired by Fiverr, which was great for them. But they had a freelance workflow management solution that helps you manage freelancers that you might be working with on your team. So similar to what Deal or Oyster do in terms of helping you with contracts, billing, everything, that employer of record if needed, all of those back end bits that can happen, that can cause compliance and billing problems, and workflow problems for companies using tons of different freelancers. So after speaking with they had a headline. It was a typical B2B headline on their homepage that was, do A, B, C, and D. It's like, do all these three things, and was trying to cram it all into one headline. So, it's like they say, win more customers, grow your business, and make more money, or things like, not that similar, but it's like the typical headline. Here are three things that you can do with our product, or what you're going to achieve. And everyone that I spoke with, they just talked about just how easy the solution made it for them to work with freelancers, that it was just so much of a better way. They couldn't even imagine that there was another way to manage freelancers outside of a spreadsheet. This was still, again, in the earlier days of Deal and Oyster, and they weren't as big or popular as they are now. But everyone thought it was just such a better way that I've never looked back. And I said, so that's what we need to try making the homepage headline as we started working on it. And so the manager was like, "Are you really sure?" I said, let's just test it. So they took the headline, and they took more or less the same subheading that we already had for the homepage. And literally the new headline on the page was, "There's a better way to manage freelancers." Literally, like, instead of do A, B, C, and D, it was like, there's a better way to manage freelancers. And the subheading completed the thought that was open in the sentence. And the time on page doubled, the scroll depth doubled, the bounce went right down. Like, the impact was just instant. And it wasn't even that we completely overhauled the website or overhauled the web page. It was simply, we took the value that people were talking about the most, we turned it into a simple headline, and then we just put it out there for testing to see what people would respond to more. I think the key there, it wasn't just the information that's on the page, something that they're missing, but often copy sometimes tries too hard. Mm-hmm. Like we talked the earlier point about democratizing information. So people are happy to read if there's good flow of information on the page, if all the bits and blocks and pieces that are answering their questions that they're thinking of in their mind are there on the page, they will be happy. I mean, they'll scroll around a bit. They'll be happy to settle into the page and to read quite a bit if all the information is there and they can see that it's there and available for them. If you're trying to over optimize the copy or trying to make it work too hard at every single point, it loses that flow, it loses that richness of context, and it's really difficult to read. And then it's so much for information for people to process. So for example, the cognitive load, manage your freelancers, save time, save billing headaches, and do something else, versus there's a better way to manage freelancers. Your brain has to process 3 different pieces of information in one headline versus one. So you just look at the difference, and then that gives people an opportunity to say, well, is this interesting enough for me to keep reading, rather than wait, I have to think really hard, do I even understand that first headline on the homepage? So it's a matter of taking that information, breaking it out, like we said, and pacing it through the page to give people that opportunity to go to, have a look around and find it for themselves, instead of trying to force it all to them at one point in time.
Yeah, I think we're often as marketers, we're so afraid of not saying all of the stuff that is relevant. We just like try and cram it all in, and it just, it sounds
all the things.
All
the things,
Oh yeah, completely. I've been there. Yeah. So simplicity is key. Eden, I have one final burning question for you that obviously wanted to ask because of your role and because of the way I see this being used in the marketing space. What are your thoughts on AI-based copywriting? It is. Some people are like, no, we'll never replace people. Others are like, well, it's a great starting point. Other businesses, quite obviously, use it as, to a significant percentage. And then you're like, that really does sound like ChatGPT. What are your views of where AI plays a part in copywriting?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, like we discussed before, like AI, and especially AI copywriting tools, basically they're calculators. And this is a metaphor that I heard from the owner of an AI ad platform that would generate that had LLM built into it, and it could generate copy for you, or it could generate multiple things for multiple variations for you. And he said basically it's like a calculator. So just like, and that's really, really good way to look at it, because it is, at the end of the day, a tool. So just like you still need to know how to do math, you still need to know what X plus Y equals Z. You still have to know what X is. You have to know what Y is. You have to know more or less what Z should look like. It's the same thing when you're using AI tools. You need to know what data you're putting into it, or where it's drawing its data from, and if how trustworthy that is, or how much it might hallucinate and give you something that's completely rubbish. You have to know what prompt, so the equation that you're putting into it, and you have to have an idea of what to expect out of it as well, because if you don't know what to expect, you have nothing to evaluate the output against it. And I'm not talking about custom trained LLM. So you've spent the time, you've trained it, you've prompted and prompted. That's something that takes a lot of time, and most lay people don't have the time to go and build their own custom LLM. At this point in time, it's getting easier though for people to do, but it takes a long time. And there are a lot of clients, especially in the B2B space, that have a flat out no, simply because there's IP involved. Even if you turn off the training settings and things like that, there's still so much ambiguity with how private is your information. Yes, no. There's too much at stake with regard to that. So what you can actually use, even to put it in it, to prompt it right, you often can't get enough to really get an exact prompt. So again, just like you need to know how to use and know math to use a calculator properly, you still should have a good understanding of copywriting to be able to get the right kind of output from it. That said, it is good. It can level up your writing. It's very easy for helping people who struggle talking about things in a clear and concise way. So people who would often spew out, 3 paragraphs of tell me what your product does, and it would take 3 paragraphs of them to get to the bottom. It can help you whittle that down into 2-3 sentences, no problem at all. But what it really struggles with is being unique, because you have to feed it with unique information for it to give you back something unique. And if you don't do that, then it's not going to give you something unique. It will give you the average of what is available on the internet. And the average of what's available on the internet is pretty average.
Yeah.
So, and you want to do, and you need to be doing better than that.
Yes.
If you're going to, if your copywriter is actually going to perform the way it's supposed to, if you're any of it being in a CRO you're doing is actually going to be performing better. So it's not just using it to create another 10 variations of this headline for A/B testing just because we need to put out, create another 10 variations. It's, well, are we even thinking about this in the right way? And maybe we just need 2, and maybe we only need 2 really good ones. And again, it's not just as simple as that. Yes, it can create a bad first draft for you, but for me personally, for example, like I struggle with it because it's faster for me. And again, I've been doing this for years now at this point, so it's faster for me to just write the thing than to feed it the right data, prompt it with the right prompt, and then spend time tweaking the output to still get the thing that I want. For me, it's still faster for me to just sit down and write the thing. Again, as a writer, I use Midjourney, or I use Canva's AI tool, and I think design tool. I think it's really cool, but I'm not a designer, so I think it's cool. So and my designer friends like it's rubbish. So it's the same perspective. So there are things that it can do, and there are things that it can be helpful with, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. If you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to know what you're doing. It sounds right, but a lot of it can be wrong, and you don't know what's wrong until you've published it and someone's called out this is wrong on social media.
Oh yeah, and I think what really struck me about what you just said there is it almost amalgamates the average of everything. And if you want to create something powerful that like gets people like extraordinary, that gets people to go, yeah, that makes sense to me, average is no way gonna cut it. So it wouldn't work for performance copywriting. It's great for information, or like if you're trying to get email to communicate something clearly. But if you're going for like stand out, then it's not the place to go.
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you just a really quick example. For example, I was working with a luxury work bag company a while back, and they were looking to write a landing page about helping promote their bags. Luxury work bag, $700 and up, not cheap. Handmade, genuine leather, all the good bits and pieces that went into it. But I actually went to interview their customers, and one of the women, she said, I didn't want to feel like I love this bag because it makes me feel like I'm not dragging a mum bag around. I'm like, what do you mean by a mum bag? And she's like, your old blur kind of bag that it's not fashionable, but it gets the job done and just makes you feel kind of blah when you're going out, like you're leaving in yoga pants and a sweatshirt. And as soon as she said it, I went, you know what? I think no, most people will have a mum bag at home, like that nothing bag that they don't feel very good about taking out, but it just gets functional and gets the job done, but it's not fashionable. It doesn't make you feel special. But I've never heard that word mum bag ever anywhere. No. If you're going to ask ChatGPT what it is, it's like, I don't know, maybe a nappy bag. But
I'm checking a minute now. You said that.
Yeah, no, exactly, mate. Maybe if it even knows what it is. That was real. And from then on, we started referring to those dilapidated, funny, funky old bags that you are really embarrassed to go out in public with. We started referring to those as a mum bag. And it resonated so much with people. It's like, yeah, I don't want a mum bag. I want a luxury bag. Like they understood exactly what it meant, and you didn't have to explain it to them. And that's not something that ChatGPT could have come up with. Like, what's a mum, like that understanding of the nuance. But as soon as we've used it, everyone's like, I get it. Like, it's descriptive, it's unique, it's real, and it's and that's the difference. So if I put, try to sell me a luxury work bag in a ChatGPT, and what it comes out with is things like, buy this luxury work bag. And it's like, okay, but it doesn't say, ditch your mum bag for a real luxury treat or something like that. Like, it didn't bring anything unique into it that would elevate the product above anything else.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can completely see how that language would just make sense to so many. But these are the kind of things that are discussed before they make it into, you know, dictionaries, or like people explain what they actually are. They're just there, and if you can get that and translate it into your digital messaging, then you've really done something powerful. Oh, Eden, it was so lovely to chat to you today. I got some really good stuff. Particularly about what you just talked about there, about this whole idea of copy democratizing, that digital journey, I think is, and that we need to make things easy, but the only way that we'll do that is by doing a really thorough research. Like we can't cut corners on research. Nobody can, if you talk to customers, that's where you will get the best possible stuff. So thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you for having me. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great. It's been great speaking with you today. Thank you.
Thank you.